Hello, this is U.S. Immigration Attorney Sharifa Tharpe. I'm here live to take your U.S. immigration related questions. Go ahead and put your questions in the comments so I can answer your questions. Now, today I have a very interesting topic. I think it's worth talking about just because, based on my experience, I can predict. Um, I can reliably predict when a couple or an individual is likely to not get through the green card process, just depending on the type of spouse they have. And this also leads me to talk about VAWA. That's one way to fix a situation like this, but it's important to identify that issue from early on so that you can know whether you're going to do your own process or whether, how you're going to tackle this, right? But that's why this topic today is called A Spouse Who Will Likely Make You Fail the Green Card Process. So, I what I observe sometimes is you will have an individual who comes here, they meet an U.S. Citizen, usually a U.S. citizen, sometimes a permanent resident, who sweeps them off of their feet. They go through a whirlwind romance and then they decide to stay, or after a long distance relationship, they end up visiting. And then that spouse, it usually starts with that spouse saying, why don't we just live together or stay together here, and you can stay, I'll marry you and you will get the green card and live happily ever after. And that's great, right? Because I don't, with when you do feel like you found the right one, and you get married and you start to have plans like this, and you think it's going to start with you getting your green card so you can continue to live your lives together, you think that nothing can go wrong. But this is where I start to observe that things are not necessarily as they appear to be. So the first is that the spouse, usually, based on my experience, it's just one of those things that I identify, is that spouse usually does not know what it is going to take. They often simplify the process. They think just by marrying you, that you can get your papers, or that they can get married and you can do the rest. And so they're usually a US citizen, because if they're a permanent resident, they themselves have been through the process and they understand what you have to go through. But when it comes on to a US citizen, it's usually a US citizen without a passport. They have no experience with the immigration process whatsoever. And so they often simplify the process, and that's why they come with a quick proposal. They envision their lives with you, but they want the easiest possible way to do it. And they don't realize that going through the marriage based process is not easy. It is team work, and it can get complex. So that's the first thing, is that if you are in a situation now where you've met a spouse, or met an individual and you both are making plans, especially if they're a US citizen and they have no experience with the immigration process, the first thing you need to do is lay out to them exactly what will be required. Because they often have the misconception that it is going to be a relatively simple process, and all they have to do is marry you and you will be okay. So that's the first thing, is that if you notice that they have a oversimplistic view of what this process is going to look like, have a conversation with that person to make sure that they're not going to end up having you in this situation and then not carrying through, because then you end up staying. This is where a lot of people become my clients, is you end up staying, and then it turns into a whole different nightmare, right? Because that person starts to mistreat them, starts to get frustrated themselves that this process is so complex, and they end up walking out on them or abandoning them. So that's the other thing. Now, another is they don't work. That's just one of the things I identify. They don't usually work. And it's not to say, there may be a reason that they're not working, but it usually means that they're not going to be in the position to help you to fund your paperwork. So if and of course there are other considerations to think about, right? If that individual isn't working, why aren't they working? Where are they getting their money from? What are they into? These are just basic types of things that we have to think about when we're choosing someone we're going to spend the rest of our lives with. But especially when you know that you're going to have to depend on them here in the United States, you're going to have a hard time finding work. In some cases, you cannot work. It's expensive, this process. You have to pay for the paperwork to be done, the filings to be done. You have to pay for your medical. You have to show the income of the petitioner in the affidavit of support. And so if there's something problematic about how they're going to financially support you, then this is also take it as a red flag and make sure that this individual that you plan to spend your life with, that they're saying all the right things, that they back it up, that they can back it up and tell you exactly how they're going to help to support your lifestyle, support your needs, especially as an immigrant who's then adjusting your status to permanent residence in the United States. The other red flag is when they are not dependable. So they may be ghosting you, so they come and go. If they come and go, you guys are on and off, and they tend to leave you in wondering where they are, or leaving you at times when you want to communicate with them, but they make themselves unavailable. Red flag. And in whenever they're like these are the types of people that don't show up to the interview, or they disappear on you halfway through your immigration process. And when I say disappear, it's either they're throwing you out of their house, or they are leaving, abandoning you, and you can't find them. So if you're in a relationship with a citizen or resident, and you notice that they're on and off, then that's a red flag. And as an immigration attorney, I usually see you have these types of relationships, I usually see problems with the interview, and problems with teamwork, and problems with getting documents from them, or problems. Though I carefully choose my clients, my marriage-based clients, and I don't choose any couple to represent them, because I want to make sure that I'm representing a couple that they are in it together, that they show teamwork, that they're capable of succeeding through the process. So just as much as I work hard in these marriage-based processes, I also need to make sure that they do their part as a married couple, because it's going to also be dependent on their teamwork as a married couple. Another thing is substance abuse. So sometimes my clients who end up applying for VAWA, because they have to apply on their own, they usually find out about substance abuse afterwards, or they start to see it during the marriage, and that in itself is a process, right? It's really, you have to first, you go through different stages, where when you see your spouse, they are abusing substances, there's drug use. At first, you tend to maybe be in denial at first, and then after a while, you gain acceptance. And usually you have to gain acceptance the hard way, because then this spouse, the full effects of the addiction comes out when usually the addiction causes them to extort extort you for money, because they need to support their habits, or blackmail you about what they're going to do, to report you or not go to the interview if you don't support their habits, right? It could be gambling, it could be substance abuse as well, alcohol or any other substance abuses. So if you can identify that early on, and when it comes down to substance abuses, what I do find is they're the types that will ghost you, because they have to go off and they have to go take satisfy their addiction. And so sometimes they'll ghost you, they'll be in and out, they won't tell you where they're going. Maybe you'll smell it on them when they do come in. They'll become volatile, they'll demand money from you, to be able to afford those, and when they demand the money, sometimes they'll make an excuse and say it's for something else. So if you see those types of issues, just make sure that you face them head on, and know that if your spouse, if you spot these red flags, it's important for you to then decide whether you're going to face this and really face the situation for what it is. Because not now, with many of these types of red flags comes the mistreatment that either comes before, a little before the marriage, or even after the marriage, or while you're filing your papers. The mistreatment usually follows. And if you're experiencing mistreatment, it can be emotional, could be financial, could be physical. But if you're experiencing any type of mistreatment, then at that point, you can take control of your own process to apply for your own permanent residence. So this is where you do have a chance. If you're in a relationship, you're considering going through that with a permanent resident or a US citizen, then you have to now think about whether they are going to help you to succeed, or whether you should take control of your own process through VAWA. And you can always call, schedule an appointment, and get started on the VAWA process. There's one more red flag: if your spouse is controlling. So this can apply to green card holders, and this can apply to US citizen spouses, where they understand what's at stake for you in the immigration process. So you find that they prohibit you from working, or when you do work, they want to take your wages, or they, tell you that if you don't do this or don't do that, they are not going to go through the green card process, or they're going to cancel your green card. So anything that is where they're controlling, manipulative, jealous, uh, if you spot that, that's a red flag, and they can become volatile during the green card process. So you want to make sure that if you're experiencing this, that you evaluate whether the marriage process should be the way to go, or the VAWA process. Now, to qualify for VAWA, you do have to be married. So this is not a situation where you're considering marriage, but now they're mistreating you, but you're not married yet. You do have to be married. There are other options if you're experiencing, certain controlling behaviors, and at the same time they're putting you to work, work for them. Then there are ways to be able to get other options and other forms of immigration relief if you're not married. But in this case, where you're going for VAWA, you do have to be married. It can be a common law marriage as long as it's accepted where you are, or a legal marriage in the state or country where you got married. Now I'm going to quickly answer questions. Go ahead, give me a call if you're going through this. And if you're thinking about the green card process now, I really just do want to help to spare you some of the misery along the way, and help you to understand what you should be looking out for in a spouse, and what those red flags are. Because of course, I see many of my clients who I am able to help. That's why they're my clients now. But they do have to go through a lot of uncertainty and fear, just because it's not, the the spouse and ends up mistreating them. And based on my experience, while my clients are married once or twice, um, I, as the attorney, I see couples time and time and time again. And so and VAWA cases. So I'm able to pick up patterns that I see in many of them. And that's why I'm telling you about those patterns so that when you spot them, you make sure that you have a deep conversation with your significant other, or you really get legal advice to protect yourself and to understand what direction you need to go in. All right. So questions. Can you file a VAWA if you live together but have to go to another state for work? Absolutely. Yes, you can. And we're here to help. So go ahead. You can always give us a call and schedule that appointment. Can USCIS stop the asylum clock after 150 days have passed and I submitted work permit application? So now when it comes after the 150, so they do have to count up to 180 days. So even though you're able to submit your work permit on the 150 days, you do have to wait until 180 days to be issued your work permit. So you can apply at that time, but you're going to get your work permit when it gets to 180 days. So, it's best to apply early. So, for example, with my client who we just got his work permit, we applied right at the 150th day. And so by 180 days, they did not joke around. They sent the work permit right away. How do you know when your case is adjudicated? So you'll get a decision. Can you travel to Hawaii or to Puerto Rico? So yes, you can travel to Hawaii without being undocumented because it is considered a state. And also, you can travel to the territories as well, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands. However, keep in mind that I'm not saying you can do that because this is what I do for my clients on a case by case basis. And remember, the information I'm giving is not personalized legal advice. So you don't want, is it a good idea for you to travel? That is really up to for you to go to your attorney, make sure you get the right legal advice. This is what I do for my clients is I advise them every step of the way, including when they do want to travel. Um, File my adjustment green card and I get my work permit in 6 months. Yes, so that's around the timeline. Doesn't mean everybody's going to get it in 6 months, but 6 months is just about the right timeline to get that work permit. So you're 43 and would like to migrate. You may have options. It just depends on who's your relative. Do you have work available? Is an employer offering to sponsor you? Have you entered the lottery if you do qualify for the lottery? So there are a number of things that you'd have to evaluate to determine whether you qualify. Um, okay, so I'm not a Canadian immigration attorney. How do you know when your case has been adjudicated? So I answered that. Adjudicated means that it's been processed and they made a decision. Hello, if she hasn't gotten work permit for 11 months after filing, should one worry? Look at the service center for their processing times, and you'll see whether that's something that you need to contact them about. Any advice for CO8 interview? I have it in the next 15 minutes. So good luck with that interview. It's just a matter now with the CO8, it's the asylum interview. And they're going to ask you a lot of detailed questions about the persecution that you faced in the country that you're from. And some of the things that they do look for are inconsistencies, and so you want to make sure that you're as clear as possible about what you experience and you're as detailed as possible. So good luck. All the best with your interview. If you're pregnant and file for your marriage-based green card, does that make the process quicker? No, not necessarily. Now, if you do ask for it to be expedited because of something going on in your pregnancy, then that may make it quicker, but not just being pregnant alone isn't going to get your case faster. And you do have to actively submit an expedite request. What is the time frame you're seeing for VAWA application? Work permits, so anywhere from 6 months to 11 months. All right, so that's going to be it for me today. Thanks everyone for joining me. I'll be back tomorrow as usual to take your questions. So as soon as you see me, go ahead, put your questions in the comments, and I will go ahead and answer. And I'll also come with a topic to talk about. So thanks again. And thank you so much, Anna. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. And Jay, good luck with that interview. That's exciting because usually, the wait time is very long. So you are right at the cusp of good things happening. All right. So have a good one and tell us what happens, Jay. Hopefully you can have good news for us. All right. Bye.